See, the thing is, most annuities are not bad, but bad advice about annuities are killing your portfolio. Think of it like this. If you were to be hanging a picture, right, and you had a nail, would you want to go and grab a hammer, or would you want to go and grab a screwdriver? The problem is that most people, when they're looking at their portfolio, or unfortunately a lot of agents and advisors, are constantly trying to hammer in a screw, or they're trying to screw in a nail, right? And that's just not the tool that you use for those situations. And that's the same thing with annuities. When it comes down to annuities, the reason that you would buy an annuity is for a guarantee, for maybe a safety of principal, for tax deferral, right? There's a lot of reasons to potentially buy the annuity, but there's also, unfortunately, a lot of bad annuities out there. There's a lot of bad salespeople out there. So if you're looking at your portfolio and you're approaching retirement and you're trying to figure out like, hey, how do I make sure to optimize my portfolio? How do I make sure my money lasts for as long as I do? And what tools should I be using? Then it's probably a good idea to stop someone to talk to someone. You know, you don't want to be the person who's stuck with, you don't want to be the guy that made that terrible mistake, right? Oh, I got stuck in this bad annuity, or oh, I got stuck in this real estate investment trust, or oh, I got stuck in this investment and I can't get my money out and I have no upside potential and I just don't feel like I'm going to have to go back to work. You don't want to be that person, right? Unfortunately, when you buy the wrong annuity or you buy the wrong investment and things change, whether that's a life change or whether that's just a change in purpose of the money, well, it doesn't really matter what the purpose is usually. If you want to take the money out, you pay a hefty penalty. Now, of course, there are ways potentially around some of those hefty penalties if you have an annuity, where there may not be a way around those penalties if you have some type of alternative investment. All right, so hi, my name is Eddy Gifford. I'm a certified financial planner. I've been in this business since 2005. Actually, it's my birthday today, so I just celebrated my 45th birthday, and I'm 20 years into this business. I've been on every side of this business. I've been on the insurance side. I've been on the investment side. I've been on the annuity side. I've been with the captive company. I've been independent. I've been on all sides. I've seen everything. I've seen everything that both sides pitch. I've seen everything that investment companies pitch, that mutual funds pitch, that everybody pitches. I've seen it all, right? And I've chosen to be an independent advisor for the primary reason that I want my clients to feel like I work for them, not some big company. When I was with the big companies, I always felt like I was doing their agenda, right? And now that I'm independent, partnering with a small company, I feel like I can actually do what's right for the client. Because sometimes one company could have one strategy that works for a person. But other times, we need multiple companies with multiple strategies to accomplish whatever objective we're trying to accomplish. So with that in mind, what I'd like to do today is jump into why does everyone say annuities are bad? And why maybe they're not so bad after all. First of all, let's talk about the types of annuities. Number one, we have immediate annuities. Immediate annuities are simple. I take my money, I start receiving income from it immediately. Now, immediately is usually 1 year or less when you look at the actual contract. And what you're effectively doing is you're trading a pile of money for a lifetime income. Now, that lifetime income or for an income for a specific period of time. But you're essentially saying, I'm no longer going to have access to this money. Instead, I'm going to have access to an income stream. Now, yes, there are annuities offer like premium refunds and all those types of things. That's for another day. In the most simple way, all you're doing is you're trading your money for an income. Okay? And unfortunately, the way that most people implement their contracts In the event of a premature death, 2, 3, 4 years down the road, the insurance company gets to keep the money. Oh my gosh, annuities are so bad, right? Now, there's also what are called delayed income annuities. And these are actually, they've gotten more popular because essentially what you can do is you can take your money and trade it for a future income stream somewhere down the road. Some advisors like to use these from a planning standpoint because they can reduce your total RMDs. So again, that's something for another time, but let's talk about typically the way that someone would implement this. They would implement this with probably some type of premium refund. So you get 10 years down the road, you decide, hey, I don't want to wait 10 more years to get my money. I can turn the income on now, maybe sometimes, or I just need my money back. I can get all my money back, right? But what happened? I lost all the return on that money over that 10-year time period. What if the market doubled? What if the market tripled over that time period? You're going to sit here being like, oh my gosh, annuities are so bad, right? The other type of annuity there is what's called a deferred annuity. So the way a deferred annuity works is you start by taking a lump sum, or sometimes it can be what's called a flexible premium, which means that you add to it over time. A lot of teachers do that. But you take a sum of money, you put it into a contract, and then it's deferred. So all that means is that it sits there and it grows for a period of time. Usually that's called the surrender charge period. And at the end of the surrender charge period, you can take all your money out and move it and put it anywhere else, right? So that sounds pretty good. So what's the bad about it? Well, the bad is that there's surrender charges, right? So if we want to take the money out in year 2, and it's a 5-year plan, you're going to pay a penalty. The other thing is, if you take the money out prior to 59 and a half, there's going to be a penalty tax. And the other thing is that when you take the money out in the future, you have to pay taxes on the gains. Not any different than your 401k, but still a lot of people don't like writing that check. They don't like paying that tax. And so, man, annuities are so bad, right? But let's break down the types of annuities. So let's talk about deferred annuities, or let's talk about the types of deferred annuities. Okay, the types of deferred annuities are trashed into 3 categories. The first is what's called variable annuities, the next is what's called fixed annuities, and the next is what's called fixed index annuities. Okay, so let's start with variable. In general, variable annuities have given the annuity industry a bad name. Not because they're bad, but just because everything regarding a variable annuity isn't always that clear. So what I mean by that is when you buy a variable annuity, essentially what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to take my money, I'm going to put it into a plan. Once it's in that plan, we're going to invest it in what are called separate accounts. What's a separate account? A separate account is essentially similar to a mutual fund or an ETF, and so you invest in these different separate accounts, and a lot of times the separate account fees are a little bit higher than what their mutual fund or ETF counterparts are. So right there you can say, well, I would make more money in the mutual fund or in the ETF because the fees are lower, right? And that may not be the case with the mutual fund because mutual fund has passed through, so you could end up paying taxes on the mutual fund even if you never cash in the investment. The ETF, generally speaking, tends to be a little more tax efficient, so it would probably be more difficult for the variable annuity to beat the ETF. Now, however, if you are actively managing investments and you're buying and selling and doing all of that type of stuff, the variable annuity would probably outperform both the mutual fund and the ETF strategy because we would have tax deferral on investment. So in the event that you sell for a gain, you don't have a tax consequence. Whereas if you sell for a gain with a mutual fund or you sell for a gain with an ETF, you would have a tax consequence. So if you're super active, if you're a super active investor and you're generating a lot of short-term capital gains taxes because you're trading a lot, or if you're a swing trader, then a variable annuity could actually work to your advantage. The problem is that most variable annuities don't have a huge amount of investment options, and if they do, they're pretty much cookie cutter, and they also come with something called a mortality expense, an M&E expense, and what that is it's basically a charge so that at some point in the future, if you wanted to trade your money for a lifetime income, you could, because at the end of the day, what are annuities for? They're for income, right? I would say they're for safety and income, depending on the type you buy. But with a variable annuity, it's not necessarily safety; it's income, right? Now, some of these contracts allow what are called income riders. They give you some type of guaranteed income in the future, but a lot of times those come with fees, and those fees quickly erode your investment. I've seen contracts where you have to earn over 5% in a year just to actually be positive, and so a lot of people, when they actually realize this and start to understand this and look through everything, they get super upset. And that's why that annuity is bad. Of course, there's the other side of the coin with the variable annuities. There's annuities that have total charges for M&E, for tax deferral, of everything of 0.3%, so very, very marginal, or maybe even flat rate of $20 a month for tax deferral. And so for a person who's very active and they're paying $20 a month for tax deferral, that could potentially make a lot of sense because those annuities also do not have any surrender charges. So, hey, wait a minute, that one might actually be a good idea. Of course, if you're under 59 and a half and you want to take that any gains out prior to turning age 59 and a half, you would have tax penalty. And of course, we still do have taxes in the future on our gains, like we would with any type of retirement plan other than a Roth IRA, right? So what's the next one? The next one is what's called a fixed annuity. A fixed annuity is very simple. You get a stated rate of interest for the first year. That's it. Okay, you buy a 10-year annuity. The first year, let's say you're getting 4%. The intention is for the insurance company to continue to pay you that 4% per year every single year for the next 10 years. But the rate could change. The rate could go down. Technically, it could go up too. It just tends to go down more often than it's gone up, at least if you look at the last 10 to 15 years in the industry. So that's where, oh man, I bought this annuity and I was going to get 4%, and then I started getting 3%. Man, annuities are bad, right? But wait a minute. There's another type of annuity called a multi-year guarantee annuity. And all this is essentially a CD wrapped up in an annuity so that you have tax deferral, right? What are some issues if you have a CD? You take $100,000 out of your bank account, you put it in a CD, it pays, let's say, 5%, so you're getting $5,000 per year of interest. Guess what? You're paying taxes on that interest whether you use it or not. If you put it into an annuity, now all of a sudden, instead of getting 5, maybe you're getting 5.5 because these multi-year guarantee annuities tend to pay a little bit more than CDs, generally speaking. And you're also getting tax deferral and you're getting compound interest. So right now, I think the highest that I've seen is just over 6%. Of course, all of those change over time depending on the interest rate environment. The interest rate environment that we're sitting in today on July 9th, 2025 is a high interest rate environment, at least in relative terms compared to the last 20 years. And that's where we've seen multi-year guarantee annuities become very, very popular because you can get a guarantee for the next 5 to 10 years in the 5 to 6 range, and then you just don't have to worry about it. You get the tax deferral, but you do have liquidity issues a lot of times with these contracts, and that's the thing that people gripe about. So that annuity is bad, right? Last but not least, everyone's favorite, at least it's one of my favorites, and that's the fixed index annuity. And when I say favorite, I'm speaking in relative terms from the standpoint of the most the most misunderstood product out there, and our most misunderstood strategy out there. Because see, what happens with a fixed index annuity is you get a piece of the up in an index with none of the down. Okay, I say a piece, right? So we don't get 100% unlimited upside potential. We get a piece of the up in an index with none of the down. Okay, I say a piece, right? So we don't get 100% unlimited upside potential. We get a piece of the up in an index with none of the down. Okay, I say a piece, right? So we don't get 100% unlimited upside potential. We don't get because we're getting a guarantee against loss. The advantage of things like this is that, let's say like last year, for example, the stock market was up over 20%, right? Well, if you got half of that, you would get 12. But what if the market was down, 20% like it was in 2022? Well, you would be down 0, right? And you get to start over. You get to start over every 1 to 2 years. Now, generally speaking, clients tend to like starting over every single year, just because we don't know what's going to happen. The longer the time period, generally speaking, you would say that it would be better for you. But when you're looking at your statements each year and you see 2 years where maybe you don't make money or something, you feel like you made a bad investment, right? When the reality is that maybe you didn't make a bad investment. Maybe you got bad advice on how to allocate within the annuity itself. Because what's happened in this annuity industry, in the fixed index annuity side, is we've seen a ton of what I call them magical indexes. Really what they are, they're diversified back-tested indexes that these carriers are putting forward to say, hey, we have this index, it has a 5% volatility. What does that mean? It means that it has minimal movement around. What that also means is you're going to get about 1/3 of the performance of an equity portfolio. 10% means about 2/3, 15% means about 3/3. And I say about as a loose term because it could be anywhere from like 50% to 200%, but average out around like 90 to 100% on that 15 volatility factor. But that's not the point. The point is that a lot of people have been fed these diversified indexes, which I always don't understand, because from a risk management standpoint, as a certified financial planner, as a portfolio manager, the reason that we diversify is to bring down risk. But remember, this index annuity can't lose anything. There is no downside risk. So if this stuff is interesting to you, I would suggest that you click the link on the page and set up a time to talk to us, because it's never too late to do a portfolio checkup and make sure that the tools that you're using are the right tools to accomplish whatever objectives you want to accomplish. So back to the fixed index annuity now, okay? So what's the best thing? How should I be allocating? What should I be doing? It's my position that if we're going to use a fixed index annuity, we should use something that doesn't use bonds, right? To limit volatility. And we should use something that is tied to the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100. Why? Because the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100 have been along for a really long time. It's the benchmark that we look at. The problem with the NASDAQ 100 and S&P 500 is they can get very, very volatile. So if we have a tariff tantrum, or if we have a COVID type scenario, or if we have a great recession, if we have those types of things, volatility can shoot up significantly, and that actually increases the cost of the annuities, and then that actually decreases the upside potential related to those annuities. So that's why what we've started to see in annuity land is we're seeing these volatility factors of 5, 7, 10, 11, 12, 15. The higher the volatility factor, the more it's likely going to meet your expectations, right? And your expectations from a client standpoint means market up, you make money, market down, you don't lose, and start over every single year. If you have a volatility factor of 5 and the market's up 15, right? Then if you were 100% equities, you would be up about 5. But if the index is using bonds to help reduce the volatility, guess what? Bonds have been in a bear market since 2022. So all of a sudden, the bonds eat up all of the gain in that scenario. So we like using cash, right? S&P 500 in cash, or NASDAQ 100 in cash. We like the volatility adjustments to use cash. And then we like the volatility factor to be as high as possible. Why do we want a volatility factor? Why not just buy the S&P 500? Again, for the same reason that sometimes volatility goes way up, which causes costs to go way up. If we know that the factor is 15%, then the insurance company knows what the cost is going to be, and they can make your rates a lot more predictable. Not guaranteed, but a lot more predictable. Now that said, so what's the bad part about these things? Well, the bad part is, right, sometimes you end up in an index, the market goes up for 2 years and you don't make a dime, right? Oh my gosh, this annuity is so bad. Well, if you would have just taken 50% of the S&P 500 with another down, you would have gotten half the up. Okay, so that was just a bad allocation, or bad allocation advice. Okay, what else is bad? Well, I have to lock up my money. Well, is that really true? Because you're able to take out 7 to 10% of the value of the annuity on an annual basis. So if you put $100,000 in, you can get $7,000 to $10,000 out every single year, which most clients don't even do, because in most scenarios, if you're using this as the tool it's supposed to be used for, which is income, you're generally speaking not going to take out any more than 5%. That just seems to be the rule of thumb. What else is bad about these? Well, it's bad because there's surrender charges. What if I have a long-term care need? Well, most of these insurance companies now have a long-term care or nursing home waiver and terminal illness waiver. So in the event that stuff goes bad, they'll actually waive the surrender charges for you to take the money out. So what is so bad about them? I say that the thing that I think is the most bad about them is poor allocation advice, and then also the fact that the insurance company can change the rates on you, right? It makes sense from the standpoint that, let's say that the insurance company goes and they buy, but you buy an annuity from them, right? And the insurance company says, okay, we can pay you 6% per year for the next 10 years or the next 5 years with no liquidity whatsoever, right? You say, no, I want liquidity, right? Well, what are they going to do? If you want liquidity, that means they have to have liquidity, which means they can't invest as much, which means now maybe they're only going to give you 5.5%, right? And then you say, well, I don't want 5.5%, I want more, right? I want 10, I want 15, I want 20. Okay, well, the insurance company says, you know what? We'll take this 5.5% that we were going to give you, and we're going to go to the market and we're going to buy options with it. We're going to buy upside potential for your annuity contract, right? Now, what are they going to buy upside potential on? Are they going to buy upside potential on a magical index that may do well, that may not? Are they going to buy upside potential on the S&P 500? They can do that, right? They only know what the cost of the S&P 500 is going to be this year, because they don't really know if there's going to be a volatility spike next year. So next year, volatility could be up. And now all of a sudden, when you renew, you were getting 50% of the up, and now you're only getting 30% of the up, right? So the potential rate changes are probably like the biggest gripe. And from what I've seen in the industry, I haven't seen a whole lot of rate increases. I've usually only seen rate reductions. What's the other bad thing? The other bad thing is that a lot of these products have caps. I get 100% of the S&P 500 up to 8%. Yeah, but what if the market goes up by 30? What if it goes up by 40? You get 8. You get 8. What if it goes down? You don't lose anything. Okay? So it does help you from a safety standpoint, but it does hurt you pretty significantly from an upside potential standpoint, right? So how do you fix that? You buy a strategy that doesn't have a cap. You buy an annuity maybe that has guaranteed participation rates for the life of the contract. You buy an annuity from a carrier that has shown that they have been very reasonable and very consistent with their renewals, and the rates are very, very close, right? And then you look for something with maybe a 10 to 15% volatility factor tied to the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100, because at least you know that if the market goes up, you'll make money. If the market goes down, you won't lose. Now, there are rare instances where you have spikes of volatility, where we have like those V-shaped spikes like we had recently with the tariff tantrum, or like we had during COVID. In those scenarios, Your index is probably going to get about half the up in the market. But of course, if you end up in like a 2017 or a 2013, where the market goes straight up with limited volatility, you might actually get like 200% of the market in those scenarios. So everything tends to balance out. You do end up in a scenario where you do get a lot of upside potential, but you're not getting all of it. So that annuity is bad, right? That annuity is bad, right? The reality is that when it comes to your portfolio, when it comes to making any decisions for anything in your portfolio, you first got to decide what is the purpose of this money, and then you got to decide what tool accomplishes that purpose the best. And sometimes that might be alternatives, sometimes that might be real estate, sometimes that might be stock, and sometimes, yes, that might be annuities. So if you found value in this video, you won't want to miss this one here. Click here, and I'll see you over there.